My pleasure to welcome to the program for the first time. He is the new / old mayor of Laramie. Joe Shumway's in studio with me. You've been on the council kind of on and off for basically about 20 years now. Can you believe it's been that long, Joe?
It's been a great 20 years, but it sometimes I think it's been a long time, but other times it seems short. I enjoy being on the council.
All right. Well, you were mayor previously. I kind of got from our former news reporter, Matt, when he did the story, that you were kind of surprised that you got reelected mayor this time.
I was. I went in Tuesday, the night when they were selecting the mayor, thinking that we were going to have Pat Gabriel be our mayor, and found out that wasn't the case. They asked me if I'd put my name forward, so I did. And here we are. All
right. Well, welcome to the program. I appreciate your time this morning. We'll be visiting with you and Vice Mayor Pat Gabriel, who ended up winning Vice Mayor. It sounds like there were a couple of runoffs in the process, but I welcome you to the program, and I appreciate your time this morning. I want to update people, but you've been on the council for a while now, so you've kind of lived through the litany of the ups, the downs, the trials, the tribulations. Pretty much, you've probably seen a lot in about 20 years of service here.
I have, and each council's different. Each council brings their own problems and new projects that they're going to work on. This council obviously is a great council. We have some brilliant people, some people that are willing to work hard, and so we're looking forward to the next 2 years while I'm mayor.
Well, as the mayor right now, the end of last year was kind of a dead period because you didn't know who was going to be on the council, and I can understand that. You don't want to make some decisions and all of a sudden have somebody come in and change it right away. But it sounds like it's been a busy first month here.
It has. We of course, with the state legislature and all the bills that they have that affect the city, that's an important thing. And then also we're gearing up now for the new construction season. Mm-hmm. So with that, obviously there's a lot of things that come before the council. We'll be working on the budget. We're going to be working on all of the alcohol permitting and things like that. So it gets really busy the first of the year, and then it kind of slows down at the end of the year, and that's typical.
All right, so let's start with kind of, since you've been on the council, even though you're coming back on newly elected as mayor last month, how would you assess the state of the city right now? Where are we at here in Laramie from your perspective, Joe?
Well, let me just give you a little background. When I started in 1998, the budget for the city that came through direct distribution from the state was about $32 million.
Okay.
Now it's $29 million. We have shrunk, I think, about 17% of our budget, where the state at the time I came on was getting by somehow on $500 million. Now their budget's $3.5 billion. So they've grown, quite a bit, and we continue to get by with what we have. Now let me tell you about the state of the city. We have a great city manager and a very good staff that work very, very hard to make sure that the citizens of Laramie don't notice that we are in a budget crisis. We continue to provide services, and I think they're doing a great job.
So, what are some of the big issues right now? Let's start with kind of what do you think is at the forefront of the residents' mind? What do people talk with you? What is this council talking about here early on in a new year with this new council? Sure.
Most of my phone calls this month have come about closure of 15th Street. Mm-hmm. That's one that's House Bill number 293. Now, yesterday they passed on the third reading that now moves on to the Senate. So we had 3 amendments that came from the city, and I'll go over those if you want to.
Yeah.
But they were introduced by Kathy Conley, and the first one, which is the one on closing of 15th, or at least saying that would not be a part of the construction plans. That was one that was successful in moving forward on that. So no longer do we have the worries about having them determine that they can use 15th Street without the city's permission. Now, just a little bit of history. When the construction for the Enzi building or the STEM building was ongoing, they came and asked for a temporary closure of Lewis. And now that the engineering buildings and other things are going there, now that's permanent. We didn't want to have that same scenario happen with 15th Street, and so we're very strongly in support of making sure, excuse me, that doesn't happen again.
Yeah. Well, it was such a big issue here, and I'll give you a chance to kind of clear your throat, but it was such a big issue last year, I think, when I was talking with the mayor, and just the fact that it kind of got brought up. there was some outreach to residents, and I thought the residents really spoke strongly against that north-southbound closure. And a lot of people talked about the impact to how you would have to go way out of your way. Now, we've already had some uprising over the moving of the viaduct up north, the Harney Street Viaduct now for Snowy Range Road versus where it was. And I don't want to necessarily get into details with that. So I can understand where residents' concern was. We're going to take a major north-south thoroughfare through the heart of the city, and I'll be honest with you, I drove it yesterday. I don't always drive 15th Street because I try to avoid some traffic around the university. That's just the way I am a little bit. But there are a lot of people that count on that to get north-south in the middle of town, and I think if you start talking about branching people out down to 9th Street, which is down to 20 miles an hour for a good chunk, and then further west down to 3rd or 4th or east to 22nd, everybody's concern was how is that going to affect the traffic pattern. We've already seen an impact with the Harney Street Viaduct. So are you pleased? Is this council pleased that we won't have a closure of 15th Street to traffic?
Obviously, I'm pleased that that's no longer something that they can do without having the city involved. Back in 2016, there was a footnote saying that they wanted to, have a listening, or at least have the city and the university talk to the citizens about the potential of closing 15th Street. So we had 4 listening sessions. There was 400 people that made comments. 399 said absolutely do not close 15th Street. One person said let's close it in case a child walks across the street and gets hit. Now, obviously the citizens are very strongly in support of keeping that open. It's a major artery for the city. It's important not only for safety equipment like fire trucks and police and ambulances and that, but also for moving traffic throughout the city. So we feel strongly that we can keep it open, and with this new amendment, that seems to be something that the state legislature has agreed to.
Were you surprised they brought it up again just 2 years later?
Well, we anticipated that it was a potential because there were people that continue to talk about it. Their concept is to have the University of Wyoming a closed campus and to give them the ability to have that without interference from city traffic. However, the university is so large, we would have to close not only 15th, but 22nd, 30th, and 9th, and all of those streets, and it's just not practical. Plus, I think it's very important for us to continue to have the university and the city work together in all of these things, and so I think that there's going to be a positive outcome.
Well, it would create such a, to me, Joe, a major headache.
Right.
And the impact would be rather significant, especially, I mean, we've already seen a traffic flow pattern change with the Harney Street Viaduct. I think we knew that was kind of coming. Right. But this would create a secondary one. I think I've heard enough, just in conversations with citizens across town, enough of kind of the squabbling of the Lewis Street issue. Now that's moved down to what's the next one down? Bradley, basically, and that's starting to get blocked off in certain spots. So I understand the university's need to expand and grow, and I'm not necessarily against that, but I think their willingness to work and cooperate with the city needs to be taken into consideration. I think sometimes sometimes the university itself overlooks that. Do you get that feeling?
The university really is. I have met with our city manager, with the university president, Laurie Nichols, and she is very willing to work with us. Now, when we put forth these amendments, the first amendment was on 15th. The second amendment we had was for us to have a task force that works with the university and the state on the planning of this $300 million project for the student replacement of the dorms.
Right.
And there's our university president has said that they're willing to work with us. However, we asked for 3 people to be on that task force of planning. Right now, they're only willing to give us 1 person there. We want to have the city manager, the mayor, and then 1 community person that was appointed by the city council or by the mayor to be on that. Right now, we don't think we're going to get more than 1, but at least we're going to get our foot in the door, and we're going to be at the table so that we can talk about this and give them the things that we have. When you talk about the congestion, that it would cause by closing 15 is enormous for the city. We can't have that.
Well, and I understand from a standpoint of the university saying, all right, let's close it down so we can have kind of a free, open, walking campus and things like that. But I think back, I've been here a while. We're talking like 3 decades now, and I can't think of too many incidents between pedestrians and vehicles on 15th. The traffic through there is usually pretty good about knowing where they are and watching out. There's been a couple of incidents. I'm not going to say there's been 0, but there's been a few, but not as a significant number that I think is going to have a major impact to try and warrant such a closure. So I'm glad that you update us on that, and I'm glad that we have an amendment so it doesn't look like, at least at this point in the near future, we're not closing down 15th to street traffic. Anything else that is really popping up from the legislature right now that would impact the city of Laramie?
Right now, the items that we have are being tracked by the Wyoming Association of Municipalities and also the city. We have our staff over there every day following all these amendments. There's a lot of things, but most of them don't reach the level of interest that 15th Street does.
Well, that's good to hear. All right, so we take away from the legislature, what else is big that's happening within the city right now? Again, we're visiting with Mayor Joe Shumway here on this Thursday edition of Laramie Live on KOWB.
Well, there's some future council agenda items and work sessions that we're going to be having that are going to be making quite an impact on the city. Let me just mention 2 or 3 of them because I think these are things that in the future are going to get a lot of interest.
Okay.
One is I met with the Associated Students of the University of Wyoming, and they're very interested in the student housing and rental standards, landlord-tenant agreement with the university students.
Okay.
Now, once we get into that, it seems real simple, that we need to work on making sure that their grievances and inspections and things like that are there, but it's going to impact an awful lot of people in Laramie. I understand about 900 individuals in Laramie that have some apartments available for students or for other people, and so once we get into the inspection and into standards, like exits from basements and things like that,
okay,
it's going to be an expensive and it's going to be a very divisive thing that we're going to have to make sure we take cautiously and work very strongly with the city and the apartment owners and also the university.
So if you're a landlord, you got to be paying particular attention to this, is what you're saying.
Yeah, that's going to become a hot topic.
Okay.
And it's going to come sometime this spring, I believe, introduced by the council. Now, also there's been an ad hoc committee that I worked with. It's going to be bringing some new proposals for points for all of the different places that serve alcohol. So there's going to be some new things that the council is going to have to vote on there too. That's coming up. Also, I met this past week with Sheriff O'Malley and also with the county commissioner's chairman about the potential. Well, we have to come up with a new agreement for the detention center.
Oh, okay.
Because up until July 1st of 2020, we have been able to cite people out of municipal court into the detention center, and because we had made a contribution for the completion of the detention center, we had free housing.
Oh.
That's not going to continue after July 1st. So we have to come up with an agreement that we all work on there. So that's something we're working on too.
Mm-hmm. All right, we're visiting with Mayor Joe Shumway here on a Thursday edition of Laramie Live on KOWB. Our first chance to visit with Mayor Shumway since he took over last month. He has been busy here, already rocking and rolling. You mentioned a lot of construction projects. It's always a hot button topic around town, especially because we know that you got to wait for kind of the ground to thaw. We've already had some issues. There's been, it seems like a number of water main breaks across the city here, just because I don't know if it's aging or what's going on, but it just seems like there's been a lot of little small closures here and there.
Yeah, we see that with the freeze-thaw, and there's been some significant ones that have impacted people. We're trying to get to where we can notify people right away so that they know that when they can expect to receive water returned to them. But that's something that we had a study called a Red Oak study years ago to where we were trying to get ahead of the curve. We were having over 150 breaks per year. Now we're down under 100, but still, every time it happens, it impacts each neighborhood that it impacts.
Yeah, there was a significant one earlier this week on Sheridan Street.
12th and 13th on Sheridan.
Yeah, and that impact, and that also impacts the traffic flow in this town as well. So there's a lot. Do you guys have already a plan in place with major construction projects as we get closer to construction season? I mean, we can talk more specifics about these later, but do you have an idea of what direction we're going and where people might need to be aware of coming up this summer?
Where we know where we're going to go, we let them know in plenty of time so that they can do that. But obviously, anytime there's planned work that's done by an outside construction company, breaks are handled by the city, and obviously we put a priority on getting breaks fixed as fast as we can.
Mm-hmm. Major areas that people need to be aware of for projects, or are you guys still kind of deciding where that goes?
Well, we're deciding. When we get into the budget, we're going to be deciding exactly where we go. We have, money from the specific purpose tax, and we'll make those plans and projections, and we'll go forward from there. David, you mentioned that the construction season is upon us. Let me just mention how major this housing project is going to be. It's going to be over $300 million. Now, in the state of Wyoming, I don't know anything. Of course, the capital renovation was $300 million. But
right.
The state of Wyoming has invested in the University of Wyoming over $1 billion now in the last 10 years in construction projects. That's huge.
Yeah.
And that's obviously a benefit for the city of Laramie, but it's also a huge responsibility now with all this new construction for our planning department, on our fire and police and all of that.
Yeah, I can just imagine Grand right near the dorms and 15th near the dorms. That's going to be a little bit of a mess for a while, because that stuff doesn't happen, in 2, 3, 6 months. It takes a lot of time.
The demolition of the dorms is going to be huge, and a big impact on our landfill if the demolition debris go to our landfill. So that's going to be a big impact too. When these projects come along, they really make a big difference, and that's why it's so important that we cooperate not only with the state but also the university, and I think we're getting that in place to do that.
Obviously, we're going to continue to, kind of update the folks each month, whether it's with you or Vice Mayor Pat Gabriel. Before I let you go this morning, obviously, the citizens passed the Sixpenny Tax last August, the fifth penny back in November. Is the council looking at specific areas to use those taxes right now, or are you still kind of in the planning stages of where that's going? Well,
both. We obviously, the city of Laramie we know exactly how much we have, because on the specific purpose tax, we tell them exactly where the money will be spent.
Right.
Now we have to decide whether we're going to bond some of it so that we can use the money earlier before the collection, or that we can just take the money that's available and start projects right away.
Oh, again, we're visiting with Mayor Joe Shumway. Lastly, before I let you go, anything else that citizens need to be aware of that's happening, big topics with the city council right now, whether you guys want comment, feedback from the public, anything else kind of come to your mind?
Well, I just want to say this. We have gone from 8 departments down to 6 departments. We have really changed the way the city operates now, where we have a chief operating officer, which is Malia Brown, and then also now we brought back our assistant city manager. So we have really changed a lot in the way in which we've become a smaller government, but also one that can continue to provide all the services. I don't think, from what I hear, that people have noticed that we have had such a huge reduction in staff and in funding for the city, because we continue to work our overtime and do everything we can to make sure the city receives what they expect from the staff and this council and the city.
Well, with that, we'll put a pause right there. I know we could probably keep going, and we could probably roll on about a number of topics, but I graciously thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you, David.
And we'll check in with you and Vice Mayor, and we'll talk more specific topics as we go, but I appreciate you kind of giving a city, kind of a state of the city update. It sounds like things are actually in better shape than some people might realize.
I believe they are.
All right. Mayor Joe Shumway, thanks so much for the time this morning.
Thank you.